Antiheroes are just like regular heroes, but they have one thing regular heroes lack: a personality that never gets annoying. Antiheroes are for those who realize that childish concepts like doing the right thing or basic decency are for lame nerds who don't understand the value in brooding in dark corners on a moonlit night. Antiheroes are the peak of protagonistic endeavors. You still get to save the day, but act like doing so is above you, so nobody thinks you're cringe for caring. Nobody ever finds antiheroes cringe. Not ever. So Jtholomew the Bold, the slayer of dragons and all my detractors online, he's getting sidelined. He likes rescuing cats from trees and helping the elderly cross the street. Far too much to fit this video. We'll waste no time in our new protagonist's introduction. Meet Killblood Heartthrob, the Black-Hearted, the Prince of Shadow, the Lord of Edges. At age 14, he killed both of his parents after he found out they were necromancers, only for it to be revealed that they weren't actually necromancers. They were just emos who liked doing photo shoots in graveyards. The tragedy of this dark and twisted reveal set Killblood on his dark and twisted path forevermore. Now, other protagonists, like Jtholomew, may be accused of being self-inserts, but not Killblood. Even I'm not cool enough for Killblood to be my self-insert. But he will have all my best qualities, especially my humility. Because Killblood, tortured soul that he is, will always angst about whether he's powerful enough to defeat his enemies. But of course he is. I mean, he's the protagonist after all, but I guess he doesn't really know that. Such situations will often be how we get his characterization across, though. We're real big fans of the strong, silent type here, so Killblood's only going to communicate in grunts and hand signs. When he does speak, it's only ever one word, of which we could make a six-sided die to see which of them he says at any given time. The possibilities on the die are no, pathetic, worthless, shit, weak, and beer. This covers all possible communications he will have that he can't make up for with obscure hand signals. Most of the time he'll be speaking, it'll be in his inner monologue, which will go on for pages and pages every time he's in a social situation. His wondering if every random passerby is going to try and kill him, or if the cabbage salesman is actually poisoning his wares, will come off as him being a rugged, observant survivalist, and not a paranoid train wreck. But if we're going to have an anti-hero, we do need to set the stage for what he's going to be anti-heroic about. There's only ever one anti-hero's villain archetype, and that's the corrupt figure of authority. And that's because regular dark lords, or dragons, or monsters, or whatever, are too lame for our anti-hero to really bother with. And where's the angst potential in wondering about whether you should kill a monster that's literal only motivation is in killing people? So Killblood's opponent will be a man by the name of Honest Trustworthington, Grand Duke of Shadowia. Shadowia, the dark and twisted homeland of Killblood, is in the northwest of Kingia, where it always rains, is foggy, is stormy, and always rains. Now stop me if you've heard this one before. Honest Trustworthington became the Duke because he's a greedy bastard, and that somehow got him into that position. Then, shocker, he started embezzling government revenue and using it to fund his own projects. Now he's exercising more and more authority over the local population, and what was once a respected entrepreneur is now a cruel despot. You know why you didn't stop me? Because this has never been done before. This unique threat will be Killblood's alone to deal with. Because, make no mistake, Killblood works alone. Which makes sense for him too. Because after he killed his parents at age 14, he was then raised the rest of the way by wolves, out in the forest. It was during that time that he forgot how to talk. He also still licks himself in certain places like the wolves did, but I guess some old habits die hard. When the story starts, Killblood will be living in a gutter, or perhaps a dingy one-room apartment in the center of Shadowia's biggest city, Darkham. He works at the misery factory that churns out weapons for the armies of Honest Trustworthington. He works back-breaking 25-hour shifts, but never complains. That would be lame. One day, when one of the supervisors starts beating up an underperforming factory worker, Killblood decides he's had enough. He kills the supervisor with a wrench and then escapes the misery factory. He cleaves through other supervisors with his bare fists, throwing them against walls and shoving them down assembly lines. How does he do this? Well, because Unique amongst all antiheroes, he's been both blessed and cursed with the bloodlust, which is not vampirism, not at all. Twilight made vampires lame, so we'll never do anything like that. Is a condition that gives Killblood the insatiable urge to kill others and spill their blood. He doesn't have to drink it because you can get diseases that way, but he just has to spill it. He's been restraining his urges all this time because he's just got such a strong will, and because then he'd have had to have been on the run before the story starts, but then we can't have the wish fulfillment angle of having him escape a terrible normal life. He was cursed with it back when he lived with the wolves. He defended his pack against a monster in the woods that only existed for us to introduce this part of his character. He survived that encounter, but he was changed by it. Now he'll have to use his dark power for good, or should I say, anti-good. Antiheroes tend to get pretty crazy powers that up the age rating to R most of the time. Now, I know in the past we've been talking about keeping things PG-13 for our inevitable movie adaptation, because that's the best way to get the most people into seats. But the truth is, parents don't read age ratings anyway, and we're really aiming for the Deadpool crowd. You know, the Deadpool crowd who thinks they have better taste than most Marvel fans, but if anything, have it far worse, as is their hygiene typically. So while the bloodlust does act as a curse for good old Killblood, it also does grant him epic boons, namely blood magic. Look, if you ever want magic to sound evil, it's blood magic. You know, sometimes necromancy, the literal puppeteering of your grandma's corpse, is perceived as evil magic in fantasy settings, but it's gotten kind of normalized now because of tabletop RPGs, and I mean, skeletons are pretty cool, even if it does mean you have to touch dead bodies. Where was I? Right. Blood magic. The magic of blood. Bloody magic. This is the default option for wanting a magic that can actually have benevolent uses, but will still come off as edgy and dark. Now, you might remember from earlier videos that our magic system is not at all compatible with elemental magics like blood magic specifically, and I would tell you to shove it because this is canon now. Now, what exactly does blood magic do? Does it allow him to heal his wounds by literally just sucking the blood back into his body when he's hurt? Can he donate or even conjure it to injured people and work as a massively life-saving blood magic donor? And against his enemies, could he not just give them a deathly nosebleed, or upon landing a single cut, tear away the rest of their blood and leave them looking like a Capri Sun you dropped a cinder block on? No. He just kills people with his sword. The blood magic just comes in every time he lands a cut, spraying more of the enemy's blood out than you'd see in a Kurosawa film. More blood equals more mature storytelling. After all, that is why the Saw movies are the most mature films ever made. We could also make his speakable lines go up to a D8 if we wanted and add the phrase, "I am stained bloody with red blood," to be a stock sentence he says in place of thinking about the carnage and violence he causes. One of those kind of lines he'll say while covered in blood, of course, clutching his sword in one hand and his fist like this while he looks up mournfully, not actually mourning what he's doing. It's just a vibe. Into a rainy sky that washes some, but not quite all of the blood away. There has to be some blood on him at all times, remember. I do wonder what would happen if I initiated like a drinking game that involved taking a shot every time I say blood in this video. I would not recommend it though, because if I did incite that, it'd probably be deadly enough to make me one of the world's most prolific serial killers. Would that count as serial killing though? Whatever. The next thing to figure out is our antihero's love interest. Now, an important concept when writing antiheroes is to make their lives as miserable and thankless as possible so that we can pretend that at least 10% of their relentless edginess is justified. But unlike a lot of love interests, we're going to start the story with these two already together, because antiheroes are cool and can get into relationships as much as they want. Nobody finds their attitude, dubious methods of making income, or general bloodlust to be a red flag. But we'll name this love interest Wilby Fridged. Wilby is smart and clever and funny and hot and has a stable job. She's honestly more capable and competent than our protagonist is, and probably somewhat less annoying than him as well. Honestly, one might even wonder why she would be in a relationship with Killblood, considering she can take great care of herself and could definitely land a relationship with a much more stable individual. But she doesn't have blood magic, and that's kind of the difference maker. That and Killblood's peerless charms, as we've been demonstrating. But Wilby is pretty great. That's why we kill her on page 3. All that description I just gave you, that'll be in the manuscript near verbatim just before she gets hit by a semi-truck. Wait, nope, wrong setting. Before she gets run over by a horse. A horse ridden by honest Trustworthington, because he wasn't looking as he raced down a hill somewhere. And this will be the reason that it becomes Killblood's journey to hunt down honest Trustworthington. He does not care whatsoever for the thousands starving on the streets, doesn't even look when a child asks him for a scrap of a crust of bread, but run over his hot girlfriend with a horse? Now it's on. Is there any value lost in killing off what might have been one of our most interesting characters on page 3? No, because love interests aren't people, nor is anybody who isn't the protagonist, really. That's also why we'll kill off his brother, childhood dog, and entire extended family by page 5. While we've been essentially making it so already, this is crucial for the establishment of the tragic backstory required by all antiheroes. Remember, people's decisions and outlook are determined purely by the things that have happened to them. In fact, we're defined by the worst things that have happened to us. It's not like you can ever overcome those things, nor that in doing so one might stumble across one of the best kinds of character arcs. But what is a character arc, really? It's the arc from the beginning where the protagonist hasn't won yet to the end of the character arc where they have won and their epic blood magic powers have gotten even stronger, though they were already the strongest person ever by the time they started. Now with this tragic backstory, you might expect it to define Killblood's outlook on the world, that he might reference all those people he lost constantly, or that he might wonder if the person he's becoming is what any of them would have wanted for him. But it won't be that way for a few reasons. 1. Being sad about your dead relatives is not quite the same as the angsting we actually want. 2. Then we might have to actually come up with different events and good times he's had with all of those people. A bunch of now one-sided noodle incidents that could be explained but never quite understood. And overall, we'd have to actually put care into these plot people that we wrote into Killblood's backstory. And then 3, it would imply that Killblood isn't strong enough to simply move on, and anything that implies Killblood has any weaknesses is bad. So in the first 5 pages, when we describe these people and how they died, that being cholera, bar fights, and boating accidents, we can have Killblood stoically lament their passing, and then he will never talk or think about them again. The other benefit of writing things this way is that without any pesky side characters getting in the way, we can have a lot more time to spend with Killblood specifically. I mean, what's more interesting than Killblood? He doesn't speak, he's emotionally stunted, and has a stock revenge motive propelling him through the plot. Don't you want to know what such a guy has to say, or internal monologue about in this case? You might also be wondering about the mentor character that all stories are mandated by law to have. Well, we did have him, and his name was Sanguius the Crimson, an elder blood mage. You might expect me to say, and he taught Killblood the secrets of blood magic, that he might one day fight injustice, or whatever else you could do with blood magic. But that would imply that being raised by wolves wasn't enough for Killblood to know all of that stuff already. So instead, Killblood killed Sanguius in an honor duel at his first day at the Blood Magic Academy. Because, of course, there's a Blood Magic Academy. Because there needs to be a magic school in every fantasy setting. But we don't want to actually spend much time there, and so, ergo, Killblood gets there, free tuition I guess, because I don't think we really gave him all that much money to work with. But then again, the fanfic writers will find him a lot hotter if he did come into a lot of money, so scratch that. He inherited all the money from his dead girlfriend who actually had a stable job, then spent about 70% of it drinking. After getting his stomach pumped somehow at a medieval apothecary, he then spent the remaining 30% of it to go to blood magic school. But then he was challenged by Sanguius for his arrogance, or what Sanguius called arrogance, we call it justified self-confidence. And so Killblood bloodily killed Sanguius with a single strike. This is all on page 6, by the way, if you're keeping track. The beginning needs to be short so we have more angsting time. He then turned 180. No. 360 degrees around and walked out of the blood magic school, confident he knew everything he needed to know. None of the students nor staff at the Blood Magic Academy actually liked Sanguius all that much, thankfully. so he won't have to worry about any revenge plots. Unless we run out of ideas for the manuscript, considering we've still only given ourselves about 6 pages of content. So maybe if by like Act 2 we're running out of ideas, then we might have some vengeful blood mages come after Killblood, but we both know how that'll go for them, don't we? But with everything important finally established for Killblood, he's now ready to go take down Honest Trustworthington, which he does. It's actually quite easy. Honest is just a corrupt businessman, not a battle-hardened serial killer-esque blood mage. The fight starts on page 299 and ends on page 300. What did we do with the intervening pages between page 6 and there? Antihero stuff, of course. And what exactly is that? What is it really to be an antihero? What have I described here that makes him an antihero as opposed to a regular hero? Well, he's never actually done anything that unheroic. Killing Sanguius maybe wasn't great, but he's also a master blood mage, so he was probably kind of a bad dude. And it's not like we're going to have Killblood like kick dogs or actually be rude to people, because then the audience wouldn't like him. You must remember that audiences hate characters with actual personality flaws. So what is the difference between a hero and an anti-hero anyway? It's literally just vibes. When you're on the other end of their sword, they look about the same. But with that established, hopefully now you know how to write the best anti-hero to ever be heroic, but emo about it. Anyway, if this sounds like a place you want to be, we have a Discord if you want to hang out with my editor and I, and a Patreon if you're crazy enough to want to where we post all our videos early. As we close out, I'd like to thank those patrons of ours: Sonny, Isaac Parrott, Raymond Don, Sadako, Cavalier, Sazabi, Shieldmaid Fenya, and Michelle of the Knights of the Inner Circle, Vion and Jody on Void our Knights, and Greer, TOW, Craig, Victoria Lauren, Noah, Saint Sir Nicholas, Joush, Kelly Citron, and realize, our loyal squires. And remember, the truth about anti-heroes is that all this edge is kind of a result of our relentless desire to mix reality and fiction. At least that's what I think. We want stories of heroes, of the bad guy going down and someone saving the day, but we've become cynical enough to have a hard time believing anybody would do it for unselfish reasons or in any sort of unselfish ways. There are a lot of ways to write great anti-heroes, jaded, flawed, imperfect, yet still serving good ends by the end of the day. But regular heroes are good too. Sometimes people do just do good for its own sake. And yet sometimes the inverse is also true.